8.9 is on waste reduction methods, about changes that we can make to our current practices to reduce the amount of generated waste, and then their benefits and drawbacks. The most effective thing that we can do is to reduce what we produce in the first place. It takes the least amount of energy, can be changes that we make by using our own shopping bags, reusable water bottles, reusable cutlery and straws, reusable jars, dining in, because fast food in itself generates so much waste. Another word for this is called source reduction, meaning just not producing the waste in the first place, because if we have no waste, there's nothing to dispose of. Now, of course, it does take a rethinking of just how we live our lives, and that's difficult. The next thing we want to do is to reuse things. If we have the waste, just giving it a second life, or maybe a third life, or a fourth life. It could be things like if you happen to have plastic bags already, or if the grocery clerk just gave you a bag and like, oh man, I forgot my bags, and I don't know, you felt rude and didn't want to say no. I don't know. Reusing that bag. Maybe it's for trash or pet waste. It doesn't even have to be those plastic bags from trash. It could be, from food packaging. If, you just can't give up that favorite cereal, I understand that, but maybe reuse that bag for trash. Or reusing jars for, other things. It could be bulk food. It could be leftovers. If you can give them a second life, do. It does require creativity and, again, rethinking how we live our lives. But it does keep things out of the landfill because we're holding on to those things for longer, and therefore maybe even reducing what we use in the first place. And then, if it can't be reduced, it can't be reused, recycle it. This can be challenging. I know in some cities, recycling programs aren't that great, if maybe non-existent. But if you can recycle, even if it's using the plastic bottle at work or at school, and holding on to that until you can recycle it, it's better than throwing it away. The downside of this is it is energy intensive and can be costly. Composting reduces the amount of organic waste that goes into landfills, and therefore reducing the amount of greenhouse gases, particularly methane, that gets produced. It is challenging, especially because it can be stinky and very complicated. It's temperature dependent, can attract rodents, other undesirable organisms. The term that we use to decrease the amount of waste as much as possible is integrated waste management. It's very similar to integrated pest management. It's just a way of looking at the impacts of items at every level of production, reducing the waste as much as possible, and also making a priority to reduce items in the first place. And then, so this is called the zero waste hierarchy, reducing the waste as much as possible. And if it can't be reduced, then be reused. If it can't be reused, then the recycler or compost it. If it has to go into a landfill, turning some of that trash into energy, and only then take it to the landfill. So most of the way we think nowadays is throw it away first, and then if it's convenient, then do one of these things. So like I said, it requires rethinking how we live our lives, and that's challenging. I think I already mentioned this in the last video, but e-waste is another big problem because if you throw them away, they contain hazardous chemicals like lead and mercury, and that can leach into the groundwater from landfills. So if you have e-waste, please find a program in your local community to take care of that. I mentioned this briefly, but this is something that we can do with the methane and the trash. So anaerobic decomposition produces methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas. We don't want that methane to get into the atmosphere, so what we can do instead is capture it and then burn it as generate heat. We can also use waste incineration. The heat from that can be used to heat up water, turn that turbine, generate electricity as well. And finally, if we had to have a landfill, at least turning that landfill into something good once it's